And we're on.
Hi, welcome back to EdTech in the Bend. We're going to Goshen, New York, although I'm not sure that's where he is right now.
Mystery.
We're going with one of my cousins by marriage, Jonathan Redeker, and he is the director of technologies for Goshen Schools, Goshen, New York Schools.
Oh, so they'll call me a coordinator, but that's good. I like the director title.
Tell him that we at EdTech in the Bend gave you now the director title.
Love it.
It's all good. He is a disruptor of thinking, and both of us wanted to make sure that we shout out to my Aunt Betty, his grandma Betty, and I'm going to take that over to her and show her. So I'd like to welcome Jonathan Redeker.
All right, thanks, Holly. It's good to be with you. Thanks, Seth. It's a joy to be with EdTech in the Bend. Those of you out in Indiana, I spend at least 10 to 20 days every year total, probably in the Mishawaka or Michiana area, I suppose, in my neck of the woods in New York. We would call it the tri-state area, and we'd be talking about New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, maybe Connecticut, depending on what side of my county you live in. So I'm in Orange County, New York. Right now, I'm broadcasting from the Adirondacks, which is awesome. I was just talking with Seth. I don't think he knew that there was a part of New York that was not New York City. So he may be one of those folks as well. But come check out upstate. It's a great place in upstate New York in the mountains sometime. Listen, this has been a fun thing to get a hold of here. First of all, big props to the EdTech and the Bend people, Seth and Holly and all the organizers. This is an amazing virtual conference. StreamYard, this is the platform we're using, has been really great to see. I've been tuned in to presenters all week, and there's still more great people to come. And I just want to highlight that the amount of work that puts into this is amazing to think about. And so big props to you. I know everyone's trying to figure out what we do next year, what we do for our conferences, and I'm going to actually mention that in my presentation a little bit. So I am going to do a little bit of a screen share here today and go through some slides with you. I hope that it's not just a one-way conversation. This is not going to be a one-time thing where I'm just presenting one direction with you, but I wanted to show you here some tools and some ideas that I think about, and hopefully my slide deck is coming in good here. But I wanted to really spend some time with you talking about this idea of how we can use technology to build human capacity and empathy. This is something that's near and dear to my heart. My background is actually in teaching social studies, which is not an ed tech situation. So I want to just highlight that's sort of a different perspective for me sometimes to think about. People are often like surprised, like, why is a social studies? Why is a liberal arts guy jumping into the instructional technology side of things? But I think the idea of technology can really start to leverage how we interact as human beings. And in the time that we had this past few months of distance learning through COVID in the spring and through the uncertainty for what's to come, this, I think, couldn't be more timely. This is perfect time to think about how we actually connect with humans in this. So I want to talk about some of this with you here too. Just sort of a background here. I hate reading a slide, but I'm going to just, in case some people are just listening, I'll read it out to you. But this idea here is that living in the age of acceleration has made teaching change much more than most of us are comfortable with. The rapid pace of change in our world means we need to adapt, change, grow, and develop new ways of thinking. It is time to reconsider the ways we approach teaching and working. And I'll tell you what, it, again, couldn't be more timely to think about this than now. If we were not changing in our world prior to COVID and all the stuff coming in and how we have to change our whole paradigm and everything, it's going to be very difficult. So thinking about this idea that we live in an age of acceleration is something that I focus on too. Think about the rapid pace of change and how we have so much technology that comes our way all the time. Now we have systems that are changing as well. But I want to start by going back in time a little bit with this little video here about how kids spend their time, so we can put some context to this today. All right, we're having problems with audio here. Let's see. Not sure why I can't share my audio. Let's see. So, all right. So anyway, I'll just share what that is. I try to change my audio setting there, but let's see. Nope. All right, I'm unfamiliar. Maybe it's a StreamYard thing. Let me just pause on that for a sec and see. Maybe I need to share my audio from that. Let's see. Let's try one more time.
Can you hear it on your end?
I can hear it on my end. It's playing great.
Oh, that's odd. Okay.
So I just changed something in StreamYard. Let me just change this up and see again. Let me know if this works, Seth.
No, I don't hear anything.
Nothing? Okay. So I can, if there's a setting in StreamYard you want to direct me to, that's fine. I can change that, or I can just sort of explain these things. I can talk through them if we need to see that. But
I think at the bottom there's a cam mic gearbox.
Yep.
Right next to there. And then you can click on audio and microphone. And then maybe just the default one.
Yeah, I've got the default rolling. It's picking up my audio great. I'm not sure why it's not streaming back through the computer, but that's all right. It's okay. We can go on without. You know what? I'll share the slide deck out to everybody afterwards anyway.
Awesome.
But let me just I'll continue on then, and we'll just go without that. That's okay. But basically, all these guys in this video are talking about what kids do for fun versus what they did for fun, and it gets really disheartening in this film as it gets over to the point where they start to talk to kids. And the kids are basically saying that all these parents and adults are having this great conversation about what I did, right? We played in the train yard. We built things out of boxes. We, found what we could in the woods, and we did these activities. And then all these kids start talking about and then the adults are saying that they don't relate to kids these days because they're all sucked into devices and electronics. And these kids are talking about how they find value in connecting in their video games, how they felt like a nothing, they felt like a nobody, but then they found a place in their video games. And it's very weird. It's kind of disheartening. In fact, what's funny about this in one place though, is that this is actually the quote where I found this. Hard-hitting Nature Valley ad shows the terrifying side of kids addicted to technology. The video I was trying to play was actually a Nature Valley granola bars commercial, trying to get people to break away from technology and to move outside and to go have a granola bar as they're hiking, which is hilarious to think about as an ad. But it's a hard-hitting ad, yet there's some really difficult truths to understand in it. The idea being is that one, adults and older adults, middle-aged adults, people my generation, even having a hard time connecting with young people who do find great meaning and value in their electronics. Not just because they are addicted to screen time, we can talk about that as a real issue, but many of them do find real value and experience communities in there as well. And there's a big disconnect for older people who don't see that. They see, the original Nintendo or Tetris, they see that as the video game experience compared to what some truly organic communities can be in a virtual world. So I just want to start with that to show this disconnect and to say that we have to figure out how we can bridge some of that together. I'm not really sure that this is a major problem. I think that there's great value here to talk about how we can build these things together. There was a study, I don't have it cited here today, but there was a study that highlighted that that boys or girls were closing the gap in science and in medicine. We talk about this gender gap and for who's pursuing careers sometimes. And girls were closing the gap until technology became such a key integral part of our medicine. And then boys started going further, they say, because boys have more video game experience. And if you think about surgeons, right, and there's this laparoscopic surgery, they're using lasers, they're using machines, they're using robotics to do different things. There's this huge advantage that some people are actually having. So we need to sort of take a look at these big picture things about how we can use these for the greater good and not just blast screen time situation for people as well. So let's start back at the basics. I'm John Redeker, and everything's going to be okay, right? We need to understand a couple things before we can understand that everything's going to be okay and how we can build connection with people. The game is changing. Our relationship with work and learning is changing, and that's okay, but we have to let that be the baseline for where we start with things, right? Some people fight back about this, and maybe you don't like this term. Maybe you're like, whoa, that's offensive. I am a boomer, right? But the reality is people are so fearful of change, except for young people who adapted who are growing up in this age of acceleration, who can adapt to things much quicker. We need to learn to tap into that, and instead of fighting back against it. But it's true. It is stressful. It's overwhelming. The amount of change, the pace of things is crazy. And we are seeing that even from our elected officials right now when we talk about a school plan. Forget about the technology. What are we doing in the fall? And your state, my state, your county, your school district might be different from the one next to you. The pace and the rate of change is unnerving, but we can start to learn to adapt that. I wanted to highlight here, today we're in a conference of educational technology, and I wanted to highlight my first EdTech conference, which was probably maybe, I don't know, 9-10 years ago when I was getting into this. This is in Rochester, New York, and I want to just highlight this. That's me riding a mechanical bull during and what I got, the point of that is not just that it's hilarious that someone got that on video, but look at all the people together, and they have beverages in their hands, and they're socializing, and we're together, and oh, we missed that so much. I can't wait to be back with everybody doing that. But the funniest thing about that is that in 2011, when that happened, I won for riding mechanical bull. I won an iPad 2, an iPad 2. And I was like, whoa, this thing is amazing. And would you believe that it still plays music in my daughter's bedroom when she goes to sleep at night? All right, so the iPad 2 was this revolutionary piece of technology, but basically right now, that's all it can do. It's obsolete. It has nothing. It can't update apps. It can't update an operating system. It's basically a paperweight that has some music still loaded on it. I can't even put more music on it, but we play some tunes that she likes in there to put her to sleep, but that's all. But the first EdTech conference, that's a funny one. And here's the sort of state of our current EdTech conferences. This isn't you all today. This is me a couple of weeks ago with some colleagues. This is from the Future Ready Schools, instructional technology leaders. We had a little get together for that. It's an organization I'm a part of, which is awesome. But this is the kind of thing that we're a part of. That's pre-haircut, by the way, if you look at me in the bottom right-hand corner. So that's pre-haircut, but it's pretty funny to see that. But anyway, this is the current status. And so how do we relate with these people in person, or our students in person, and connect human connections? It's going to be quite challenging, because this is the state of the internet as it stands today. All right, this is sort of, there's two different versions here. But if we want to think about the state of the internet, of all the different things that are happening, how many iPhone applications, how many domains are registered, how many new videos are being created, 600 plus new videos being uploaded to YouTube every 60 seconds. All right, we're a part of that here today. You have all these different things that are out there. Yeah, we can look at it in this context too. There's a different one. 4.5 million videos viewed in 60 seconds, not just uploaded, but viewed. 18.1 million text messages sent in 60 seconds. All right, 3.8 million search queries in Google. This is the updated statistics. I guess from just about a year ago, as close as I could get for someone who created this chart. You can see the creation down at the bottom there. But it's amazing to think about these features and to see how we can do this. How do we grab student attention and create human connection with people when all of this is happening? If there's, why would I stop scrolling Instagram or watching TikTok videos to go connect and be human with people when times are tough and we can't be together physically in person? One of the grounding pieces of literature that I really like is this book called iGen by Jean Twenge. And she also wrote Generation Me. It's on the title of her book here. That's a picture of the book. Why today's super connected kids are growing up less rebellious, more tolerant, less happy, and completely unprepared for adulthood, and what that means for the rest of us. Now, I could add a challenge to this, that COVID has changed what it means to be prepared for adulthood. But this book, it has been foundational in some of the stuff that I have done and some of the things that I have looked at. And that's something that I think is an incredible resource here to think about in this environment. So I'd like to suggest this book if anybody's curious about raising kids. And again, I'll share this. My audio wasn't working earlier. I'll share these links out to anybody. Maybe we can put it in the YouTube link. I can share my slide deck in the Facebook Live. I can put it wherever we want to put it. for everybody on EdTech in the Bend, folks, if you want to share this out, we can put it out there. But there's a little video of the author talking herself, and she's talking about how we've actually done some really great things to change the game for kids. Like, we've done some tremendous work in our schools. Do you remember how hard we worked to combat like teen smoking? And like, look at the numbers today. If you look at the numbers on that, it is way down. And now I know we throw in vaping and the different situations that are out there now. We've actually done some really good work for kids. But what has the advent of even parenting and school-based technology done to change them? One of the arguments that can be made is that, and she talks about this a little bit, is that we've created almost a surveillance state of our own children, where can they make mistakes? Where can they go out and fall down and have to learn to pick themselves up? When we're always watching, when we're there constantly, when we have apps that track them, track their location, track their speed when they're driving, see who they're with. This can be crazy to think about. So I love this book and this story. But here's one of the quotes. She says, "Technology is not the only thing that makes iGen distinct from every generation before them. They're also different in how they spend their time, how they behave, how their attitudes toward religion, sexuality, and politics. They socialize in completely new ways, reject once sacred social taboos, and want different things from their lives and careers. More than previous generations, they are obsessed with safety, focused on tolerance, and have no patience for inequality." Have we seen that? Have we seen that when you watch the news? If there's no patience from young people for inequality, they want tolerance. They also want safety. Very interesting things to think about. How do you and I, as older people now, in terms of teaching, how does even a 22-year-old, coming out of college, start getting their first teaching job, address these issues with young people today? Maybe the 22-year-old's part of that, but most people are not. And so we need to think about how we can change that. So that's number one. Number two, we need to think about serious generational differences. So we started with the iGen. Let's talk about what Dr. Mary Donahue says about serious generational differences that really do exist. Again, I'll share these slides out, but I wanted to just take a second and look at this one. She talks about how there's point of view anchors, like things that anchoring moments that happen to you. So I'll go across the top. If you were born, she labels the boomer generation between 1945 and 1960. If you live in that time period, JFK being shot, the Cuban Missile Crisis defines your life. A Gen Xer, 1960 to 1980, the recession in the 80s, the 90s. I would actually probably add the war on drugs, right? Just Say No, Ronald Reagan. I would think about that. Nancy Reagan. Think about that in Gen X. Gen Y, born between 1980 and 2000, you're going to have 9/11, the 2008 financial meltdown, changing your life. And Gen Z looks at things like ISIS and Newtown, Connecticut, and the school shooting that's going to define their lives. You could add even the next generation coming up. If it's every 20 years, we're just embarking on the new one. What's that going to look like? The COVID generation, that's going to be something that anchors their lives as well. And if you think about even what we do for these things, let's go down to the bottom. You look at the bottom row down here, and it just blocked with my Google slide there. But technology is what they think about it. A boomer will say they've had to learn it, right? I have to learn this to make it through my work. Gen X says I kind of use it in isolation, right? That was the advent, sort of the earliest people having a home PC. By the Gen Y group in green, it's going to be group socialization. Many of you grew up in that period, perhaps, right? That's my generation, right? Group socialization. I didn't learn to type because of Mavis Beacon's typing tutor. I didn't learn to type because I had keyboarding without tears. I didn't learn to type because of some other typing program. I learned to type because I got AOL Instant Messenger in my house, and I wanted to talk to my friends, and a lot of them all at the same time. All right, maybe it was girls. It wasn't just friends. It was like, to socialize and do that kind of thing. But I was very curious and wanted to learn that because it mattered to me in that moment. And if you look at Gen Z, you're talking about group knowledge, constructing knowledge together, gathering knowledge. Think about the Wikipedias of the world. Think about social networking. It's going to change dramatically. So where you fit in there is a big deal. And this goes on and on here to think about some examples of this as well. And I want to talk about this idea of technology as a disruptor down here. This is one of the titles I like to say is that I'm an educational disruptor. But in the boomers here, you might say it's a loss of dialogue, right? Technology stinks because it takes away our dialogue. Again, it's another sense of loss here, right? That Gen Xers would say it's a loss of human interaction. Gen Y is saying, no, we need to use it to come together. And Gen Z says we actually need to bring it to a sharing place. So if we are sitting in the boomer or Gen X or Gen Y modality, How do we relate to the Gen Z kids that we have, the iGen? How do we relate to them in our schools? We need to use that technology and not lament the fact that a screen is divisive. And when we flip up laptop screens in our classes, it puts up walls between the teacher and the student. We need to think about a way to think about these differently. And if you look all the way at the bottom right-hand corner, Gen Z, we need to provide opportunities to share and learn with our students. We need to connect with them in these platforms. So I'll circle back to point number 2 in a little bit. But the big idea here too is that we actually are doing a good job. All right, we actually are responding to things. Our society is changing, and you're part of it. All right, we're actually doing this better. Think about these victories that we've had in our society. I mentioned this in point 1. All right, there's more tolerance for people. Right, there's less tolerance for things like racism and bigotry anymore. Teen drinking is way down. Teen pregnancy way down. Creativity, collaboration, networking, advocacy are up. So we've done some great shifts in balance of things, and people are actually being more equipped for better things moving forward. So we're doing a good job in our schools and our communities. Think about though what our kids are doing. Here's what we're raising them to think like. We are raising them to think vastly different from their grandparents and parents. And the video that I tried to show at the beginning, again, which will be shared, talks about how kids growing up do different things than their grandparents and parents, and that's okay. They actually believe differently about things. We need to embrace that and teach them how to handle that and how to navigate those things. But we have to connect with them about how to handle that. And they need us. They need us to do that. All right. We can look back at that video from Nature Valley granola bars about how kids are addicted to technology. And we could talk about how kids are more alone together than ever. There's a lot of research showing that our sort of surveillance state that we've created gives them less freedom. You know, think about if you raise when I was younger, when you were younger, potentially, parents used to like drop, you know, before COVID, parents used to like drop their kids off at the mall and be like, yo, see you in 3 hours, right? Like, peace, we're out. Like, I'm going to do whatever. And now what do parents do? They often drop their kids off at the, in the mall, and the parents are like, I'll be here at the food court. Text me if you need anything. Like, you're at the food court. That's not like independence, right? You're not actually creating that. There's this app I linked up there, just a picture of Life 360, where you share everything with your family and stuff. And I wonder what that's doing to kids. So this is often how parents are acting and interacting. And schools are doing this too, don't get me wrong, when we're watching what's happening on their browsers, when we're taking a look at things. And there's a little bit of an issue that I want to challenge on that too. But if they're so okay with the surveillance state, what is that doing to them? I want to challenge you to think about this. And I know I have a social studies background. I mentioned that at the beginning, a civics background. So I often think about this. I talk about things like civil rights with kids. And I say, you know, what happens? Do you care? Wouldn't you be upset? Let me phrase it that way. Wouldn't you be upset if the government could listen to everything that was on your phone calls? They're like, I don't use my phone. I'm like, okay, what if the government could look at every text message you sent? And they're like, I don't care, whatever. And I'm getting shocked, right? I'm like, you don't care? They're like, well, I have done nothing wrong. I don't have anything to hide. So, whoa, like that's a paradigm shift that changes our government, our society. That's not just different from grandparents. That actually is quite different in general for people. And so that's quite a bit of a challenge that we need to think about as we move forward. So when we think about this idea, we have to wonder what we're doing with our students, right? We have to think about what this looks like in our schools, because we need to break some of that apart, because the idea of creating good civic-minded people that can change the world need to understand the world and why it's created the way it is as well. So when we use technology, it can often be negative, right? And I don't know, maybe you're just a fan of the dystopian style TV shows. I'm not endorsing anything here. I'm just highlighting that this one exists. There's a program on Netflix called Black Mirror. And this is the Black Mirror, right? The cell phone is the Black Mirror in the story. That technology is sort of this dark mirror, this cracked sort of thing that it's really creepy dystopian show. I am kind of a fan, to be honest, but I'm not endorsing it because but there's a couple it's all about how technology is like just barely changing different things in our lives, and these little tweaks could take us far off the deep end, right? So the technology, the Black Mirror, we've seen this with cyberbullying, we've seen this with addictions, we've seen this with kids being addicted to pornography, we've seen kids seeing all kinds of darker things that are out there. And the reality is, it doesn't have to be that way, right? Many of you are probably sitting on a computer literally called Windows, or like with the browser called Windows, the operating system. And literally thinking about a Windows, I'm sitting in front of Windows right now in my home, and I'm looking out and I see the world as it is. I can see into other places as well. If I walk up to a window, I can see into things. And we can use technology not just as a black mirror that reflects darkness and sucks us in, but as a way that opens the door, opens the window to the world, and we can see great change because of it. So that's something I want to focus on too. And I want to support them, support students, and they'll be fine. Think about this. Think about these kids. I just threw on the top right corner of the screen, I threw up a couple. The kids from March for Our Lives. Oh my gosh, after the Parkland shooting, what did those young high school kids do to turn around and change? Again, this is not political, but think about the movement that they created, whether you agree with it or not, their perspective. That was kids organizing. Malala, Greta Thunberg, you've got incredible people changing the world and youth. And around the world, we're seeing children and youth engage as social, political, and economic actors, demonstrating their capacity to make social change. Adults make a lot of assumptions about children and what they're capable of, and those assumptions are often quite false. So let's pause and think about our education system. Let's pause and think about what we're doing in our distance learning, our hybrid approach, our in-person approach, whatever school looks like, whatever it looked like back a year ago, whatever it looks like tomorrow, we don't really know, but our assumptions about what children can do may be a little bit too low. We may need to extend that and change and move forward. The good news is this: our kids need us. They need us more than ever, but they need us to love them. I did a survey of my high school students, actually the alumni, past 3-4 years, maybe 5 years of students. I don't know how often a school's done this. It was a great idea. We only did it once in the past few years, but we surveyed high school students who had recently graduated, who had entered the workforce or college or whatever, and this is the word cloud. When I asked them the question, what did you love about your experience in our high school? And the biggest thing that kept coming up was teachers. They loved the connection, the human connection with teachers. Here's a couple of things that they said. As much as I hated writing the required research paper, I was more prepared to write than at any other place. But I want you to highlight this one too. My relationships with teachers was the best thing. The close-knit community and relationships between students and faculty, the sense of community among friends, among extracurriculars, among the school. These were the top heavy hitters that came up over and over again in the open-ended responses. How do we create this if we're in distance learning behind a computer screen? How do we create this if we're in person behind face masks and plexiglass? How do we create this if school is back to normal? We must foster this in all of our schools, no matter what the circumstance, because our kids need us. So let's think about how we can empower the students, and then let's get out of the way. Let's empower them. Let's give them the tools that they need, and let's get out of the way. One of my most proud moments of my career, and we'll hope to do this again without so much restrictions from the COVID issue and things like that, but we hosted TEDx Goshen last June, actually, a year ago June, because we believe, my co-organizer and I believed that we needed to elevate our student voices. We actually organized and got TED to sponsor our event. We had an officially branded TEDx event. You can go on YouTube and check out their speeches and stuff. They were incredible. Young kids blowing our minds. We had 8th graders up to middle-aged people, alumni, and parents from the school district speaking. It was incredible. We hope to do that again. You can check out our website if you're interested in that as well. But we wanted to empower them. We didn't tell them what to talk about. We said, hey, do you have something to share? We think you have a lot to share. We know you. We understand you. Like, what's your big idea? And they blew us away because we gave them a chance to share their voice. And also think about, I just put Winemaker up there because it happens to be a friend's organization, but think about project-based learning, right? A STEAM experience. Think about how we can expand on our true meaningful work for kids. A worksheet is a worksheet if it's on a Google Doc or on a piece of paper. Can we do some STEAM activities in our homes? I saw a 6th grade teacher from my school district who was teaching kids about fractions. And I don't know how often we learn fractions, but she was teaching kids about fractions through distance learning this fall. So this spring. So what she did was she taught them about baking chocolate chip cookies and the fractions of measurement. And together on a Google Meet, they had a live stream baking afternoon, and they baked cookies together to learn about fractions. Let's empower them to do things that are real and meaningful, and then let's let them thrive. We live in a global society covered by the internet. The world is kind of broken. We know that right now, but it is also deeply connected. How can we connect kids to think more like that? We have to understand that no matter what we think politically, socially, economically, that we have a globally connected society. One of the other books that formed my thoughts on this came out probably about 10 years ago, maybe 15 at this point. The first iteration, it was called The World is Flat. And that's not some sort of like conspiracy theory book, but The World is Flat was written by Thomas Friedman. And he talked about in his book how people are engaged more than ever with technology, because in the dot-com boom, the internet was dragged across the planet, all over under oceans and across, and through satellites. It's connected deeply. So you can connect instantly with someone from another country through voice over internet or through something like this. Some of you are in different time zones as you're listening to this right now in live time, and we're connected and we can be together in that purpose. So how can we do that? Here's some practical things to think about. We can use technology to become more empathetic. And so getting into the human connection, that's, I think, what we're talking about here, right? The kids in my high school cared about school because the teachers cared about them and tried to understand their perspective, right? This is about showing students that we care and helping elevate that. And then what can we do to help students care about others is a big deal too. It's something I want to think about. What will we do differently tomorrow, next week, next year to empower kids to be game changers? And to be game changers means to be more human, right? That's something that's really important. So finding that authentic purpose with them is going to be important. And I keep pointing to the globe on that. But I want to highlight this for you. This is a little snapshot of a couple of real pictures that my students did for me just a year ago, almost. All right. My perspective and a good conversation you could have with any kid, elementary, high school, college, beyond, is that where you stand affects how you see things. I'll say that again. Where you stand affects how you see things. So it's very possible if I stand across the room from you and I close one eye and I do one of these, I can pinch your head, right? Because it's going to look tiny, right? But your head's not that small. It's perspective. It's where we stand. It's how close things are. It's perspective. And so that kids understand that even as young as elementary school. You could say, pinch my head, from across the room, and they'll close their eye and they'll figure out how to do that. And, but this was a fun photography assignment I did actually with juniors in high school. And I actually asked them, this is a concept called forced perspective, and photographers use this all the time. But the idea is where you stand affects the size and the perspective of things. So were you born in the United States? Were you born in a red state, a blue state? Were you born in a Christian family, a Muslim family, a Jewish family? Were you born across the globe? How does that affect how you see things in life? How does it affect how we vote? How does it affect how we see our generational differences? Who raised you? Did you have grandparents in your life? Did you not have grandparents in your life? Those conversations matter. And you can take this any place you want, but it will even start to connect in your own circle of students. My school district is pretty small. We have about, 2,800 kids total, K-12. And it's possible that some of these students were in kindergarten and 12th grade together and everywhere in between. And it's very true that many of them have no idea what circumstance the other one grew up living in. They have no idea. But to put this in perspective and to start having these conversations will build human connections with the kids in class. It'll build human connections with students behind Google Meets or Zoom calls or whatever you're using in your districts. But we have to start to understand those perspective shifts. And I wish I could show this to you as well, but this is about how we put people in boxes. All right, here's a video here. Again, I was struggling, if you're just tuning in, I was struggling with my audio earlier, so it's not presently working for me to share with you. But this is from TV2 Denmark. These commercials are brilliant. TV2 Denmark, it actually is, it puts people in boxes. They say, these people don't look the same. I'll just play a little clip here, and I don't think the audio works, but I'll talk you through it. So he says it's easy to put people in boxes. There's us and there's them. The high earners and those just getting by. Those we trust and those you try to avoid. There's the new Danes or Americans and those who've always been here. The people from the country and those who've never seen a cow, the religious and the self-confident. There are those we share something with, and those we don't share anything with. You can read the subtitles, I think, here. Who in the room was a class clown? And then they go in boxes and they share community together. Who are step parents? Right? It's all things that bring people together. But they were so different when they showed up. Suddenly there's us, we who believe in life after death, we who've seen UFOs, and all of us who love to dance. All right, so I'm going to pause that for now. I'll share that with you. But the point is, that there are so many differences in what separates us, but we can help kids learn to bring things together as well. And that's something that drives at what I do every day and what I hope that we can do together. There's too much that divides, but there's stuff that can bring us together as well. So I threw up this pound sign or this number sign, or I guess it's a hashtag if you want to call it that. I guess that's what people are more used to these days. You ask a student, put the number sign down on something or on a recipe for pounds of something. It's so funny to see what they do with that. Like hashtag butter, no, pound of butter, right, in a recipe, but they don't get that. But I want to talk about the idea of using hashtags in class too, because many of us are probably going to be out and about in our digital worlds that we have to engage with. And so how can we connect with different hashtags and different themes in life? How can we use social media to engage with things that can be different, help bring different perspectives for people to connect? And again, the point of this, the title of this is to create more humans, right? To be more human. I forget the exact title that I wrote, but to be more human together. So can we find other voices out there? Can we find other things that exist that can help drive us? Does your high school cover Shakespeare and Orwell every year in high school? Or do we have diverse voices, right? Are we looking for diverse voices of people of color? Are we looking at diverse voices of different time periods in life? We're looking at diverse voices that can help identify people in different ways to help bring connections in other places. There was a comedian at one point who said, if the only time that he said, look, every time, he was a Muslim comedian, and he said, if the only time my people are represented on television is with like dark, ominous music. If every time there was like, my people showed up on TV, there was like party music, people would think differently about us. And I actually think there's some truth to that, because we are very attuned into how media, we are very affected by media, but not very tuned into how media affects us. So can we find other voices? It doesn't just need to be English in this example here, but can we find other voices in our schools? We use social media for that. Find other underrepresented voices as well. There's a link here. Again, I'll share this out, but do the kids in your class start to ask, are there people out there like me? Is there ever a chance for your student who is struggling with their sexual identity or their racial profiling or their religion that wonders, like, am I alone here in my community? Now, maybe some of you teach in very diverse places, and that's actually quite good. But does our literature and our reading, does our do our worksheets and our websites that we're using, do they offer those things as well, or do we need to find them? I don't know if it's going to work if I click this, so I'm just going to leave this here for now. I'll share this out again later, but are there people out there like me? That's a really great article. It's about a girl who was wondering that, and it's called At Home in My Hijab. And it's a story, the idea is how the internet helped me embrace modest clothing. And so she ended up finding really some comfort in her faith-based garb that she had. So at home in my hijab, that was very important. In fact, I don't know if anyone has seen this, but there was even Nike had made a sport hijab that would fit the protocols for wearing a hijab, the Muslim head covering, but it was for sport. It was like wicking, the sweat, all that stuff. So really kind of cool stuff to share with people out there as well. Right. And Want to highlight this too. This is just a screenshot. You can find out all these things out there as well. I think this is a pretty diverse idea of hashtags. You can think about hashtag activism as well. Some of these are pretty old. I don't know if you remember Je suis Charlie from Paris, from the publisher that was bombed. But we have MAGA, right? Make America Great Again. We've got Black Lives Matter. We've got the Me Too movement. We've got Love Wins. We've got all kinds of different hashtags that we can actually put together. We can compare. We can see what people are talking about. If you are not impacted in your community by, for instance, Black Lives Matter, using that hashtag in your community to understand, to look on Twitter, to look on Instagram, to go to Facebook, to go to our sources, to look just on Google, because hashtags work on Google too, to go find things of different voices to bring into your community. Listen, I could put up Blue Lives Matter here too, right? This is not supposed to be political one way or another. The point is, if we don't have a balanced approach to understand how we pull in other perspectives into our schools, how will our children who we're teaching ever feel welcomed and connected and respected, right? It's not going to work unless we bring voices in that may represent more diversity in our schools. We have to think about that, and using hashtags for especially current events is a brilliant way to do that. Of course, there's great writers in history and literature and things out there that we can pull in there from print materials as well. But the idea of using hashtags to pull people in here is amazing to think about in my world. All right. And I know that I wish my video was working well for you too, but I want to share this with you too. This is about this little story here is about we can come in here. These kids were working on speaking English, all right, and they wanted to connect with people. And they realized there's English language learners, and it stinks to learn to practice English by yourself in like a room and a computer screen. So they decided that they would connect with a retirement community through some virtual connections, because they realized that we need to practice speaking, and some of these people might be lonely and they need people to talk to. So the idea was to bring these people together. And this is a company that did this. It's a marketing thing here too. But the idea of finding people to connect with in virtual spaces is incredible, right? So I love this. They're just talking. So they deal with the tech things of, can you hear me? Is my audio working? And mine's not. So that's funny here to think about. But they're talking from other countries as well. And I want to share that we could do this with our students as well. All right. So I love this video. It's actually quite heartwarming to see these young people engaging with older folks at a senior center. And certainly I would love to see people do that too. We could also offer them tech support somehow as well, if needed, for young people. But I love the idea of connecting people in virtual spaces, people who are different from you and people who are just like you, right? If you're the only person of color in your school district or in your class, maybe it's important to connect that kid with people in a larger context, in a larger community. Find a school with more diverse people in it and connect your kid who is a person of color who doesn't see a lot of people of color with them, right? If there's somebody who, if it's that much of a minority in your program, perhaps it's somebody who has a certain faith background, right? And I know there's separation of church and state and all that, but maybe there's someone who's feeling like isolated because of decisions they've made or things like that. Can we help find these places for people? There's huge platforms on Mystery Skype, Google for Educators, Google Groups has Mystery Google Hangouts for people. There's all kinds of ways to connect with your classes in virtual spaces. Look at the Senior Center. Look at the local organizations. Look at other schools. Find a sister school across the state, across the network. Maybe it's somebody, I know this is hosted by South Bend Schools, EdTech in the Bend, but think about across the state of Indiana. Maybe you want to connect in Indianapolis. Maybe you want to connect with my school in New York and ask kids what it's like to live in New York and talk with them and see what it's like. Maybe it turns out to be a moderated, more, maybe younger kids, you don't want to open it up, but to moderate a one-on-one conversation. We've had students in my school connect. We had English language learners from Morocco, all right, which is the northwestern coast of Africa, connecting with students in Goshen, New York. Now, our students were learning about Islam from kids in an Islamic country in a global studies class, which is part of our curriculum, and their kids were learning English. So we connected as well, and it fit a perfect mesh in that environment. But maybe it needs to be a one-on-one. Or maybe we need to foster a group connection with people from our communities. We don't need to go this alone. We need to connect people And that is the game changer, right? Becoming more human, to connect people, to have these exchanges of ideas and of beliefs. And we can use, this is truly using the computer, the webcam, the microphone as that window to the world. You don't have to be there. You just have to be present and be willing to listen and be physically ready to be there with people. We can't go on field trips. We might even be able to get in our school buildings. How are we going to get on a bus and go on a field trip somewhere, or on a plane and go across the world or the country? But we certainly can use a strong internet connection to connect with anybody. There is still value, by the way, in handwriting, right? I know one of the French teachers in my district does actual physical pen pals, and they still send mail. So that's also still very valuable. But I would suggest that this type of human interaction can cause really valuable things to happen for people. I know that my kids were tired of video chats at the end of distance learning, and whole group, or this past spring. They're young. My kids are elementary school. They were tired of it, but they wanted to actually have true, meaningful interaction. They wanted to hang out and have conversations with their kids. And if we throw it back actually to the iGen story from earlier, there's actually real things happening. You've seen high school kids just like leave on FaceTime in their bedroom and like hang out, just like open up a portal to their bedroom, like on their iPad or their phone or whatever, and like leave it on. And they might be playing video games or watching TV and, whatever it is, like doing homework, and they'll just have a portal to each other. There's no set conversation. There's no like salutation, conversation, and a farewell at the end. It's just like hanging out. It's this open portal. But as educators, we can do this with purpose, to connect different perspectives, to connect kids with similar perspectives. And we have to do it, because if we're stuck behind computers in our classes, maybe we have face masks on because of COVID, maybe we have plastic shields in front of us, maybe we're in an every other day scenario, whatever it might be. We have to find ways to connect our kids with each other and with people around the world who are like them and who are different. That's an important thing to think about as we connect, and we can do that using technology, using reading, using video chat, using all kinds of stuff that's out there. So the internet could do some things for us, right? The internet could do this, but really this is what I think your job is, if I could sort of land here. As to think about making kids more human, or making people more human through technology, it's not the internet that's going to do this. It's you as a facilitator, right? You have to facilitate how to be self-aware, right? Where do I stand on things? Where are my values coming from? These are questions that we can ask kids to sort of get into and think about. We know that the socio-emotional aspect of life right now is so stressful for people. We have to take this on as a next step moving forward into this summer, into next school year, and beyond, right? Self-awareness. How am I feeling? What am I doing? Why do I think this way? What am I where's my rooting? Where's my perspective? We also need to think about how we can make people more aware of others, especially the unknown other, right? If you don't have somebody from a certain culture or background or faith or whatever in your community, bring that voice in, right? Let's be aware of other people, and let's treat that. That's a way to connect respect. That's a way to be a global citizen, to think about this connected world. We cannot just say, that we're isolated any longer. We have to think about those big picture things. So to be others aware is very important. We also can work to be an empathy builder. And I know that empathy is one of the hardest things to do, because we feel we are good at sympathy. We are good at saying that we will, feel sorry for somebody, but to truly try to understand where somebody else is coming from is very important. What are we reading, paper-based even, what are we reading this summer to get to understand other people's perspectives? What are we reading to understand, for instance, the history? Why are we in this crisis where people are rioting over and protesting, peacefully about racial issues and disparities in our country? What's the history of some of those things, right? Where are we at, and how can we understand that? We need to do our own education as well, but we can then transfer that to other people. And then we need to think about how we can enable their personal voice. How can we get your students to tell their story to the world? I don't know where we are in different. I know we're in different states, and we have different experiences, and maybe we've rebranded things like Common Core, maybe not Common Core, maybe it's Next Gen. But one of the things I loved when the Common Core standards first came out, and all its controversy, when the Common Core standards first came out, what I loved is that from kindergarten through 12th grade, one of the core expectations in the English standards said that students will publish work to the web, publish to an authentic audience, to have a real experience, to say my voice matters, and it is live to a real group of people. How can you do that this coming school year? How can you enable their personal voice to be broadcast, to have a true audience, to understand that they have value, that they are important, and that they are just as welcome as human beings in your class than anybody else, even if you have a difference or reproach or whatever that may be. So I want to just highlight some of that with you today. I think that this is sort of what I'm thinking as a big picture, right? We have EdTech in the Bend. Can we use this as a jumping off point to use global outreach, to have authentic purpose, to have empathetic anchoring, to be world-changing people? I want to thank you so much for the time that you spent today, whether it's live or on a rewind at some point. I will share all of these slides. I'm sorry that my videos weren't working, but I really appreciate the time that everybody spent connecting with me today. I'm going to pause this share at this point. I see Seth and Holly pop back in, and I see a lot of chat happening. I kind of skipped that, so I was looking at my slides and sort of ranting. I could go on and on. I hope that's okay. I didn't know where my hand gestures were, my camera or anything here today, so I hope it was all good. But I appreciate everybody for your time today. So Seth, Holly, anyone want to kick it off?
Educational thought disruptor. Yes, perfect title. Because there's a lot to think about there. I was shaking my head. I don't know if Seth could see me. Like during it, I'm going, yeah. I've got a whole bunch of pictures and Twitter up. Like I was taking snapshots. I'm like, yep, powerful. And what's great today, Seth, you can back me up. All three presenters we've had, like they're so interconnected. What they've talked about.
Yeah, I saw Ken Shelton, and I love what he has to stand for, and that was this morning, right? I'm losing track of time this summer, but yeah, I've seen him speak before. He's right on the money with stuff, and yeah, definitely. And so again, I'm not giving you tools, and frankly, folks, if you wanted to connect on some tools and some ideas, I have information and notes on that. That's part of my job. In my district in educational technology, I mean, I've got the idea of like virtual reality, virtual field trips, augmented reality. There are so many cool things that you can do. And if you wanted to share some of that out, that'd be great. Seth, Holly, where's the best place for me to share my slide deck with everybody?
Seth, do you want me to email it to you and then you can
so you can, yeah, if you just shoot me an email, we're going to add it to an email at the end of the week for all of our registered attendees. If you haven't registered, register now. This is more stuff to look forward to after we're all done wrapping this up. Jonathan, thank you so much. And you kind of brought it together. And one of the things I missed not doing this in person was like the community. But now that we've like gone global and we've got you in New York and people in other countries, I think what you said, this is a launching pad for just bringing it all together and getting our students to talk to each other and the teachers to talk to each other and principals to talk to each other. We're all in it together.
And of course, schools wants to partner with you because we may have a connection and all. So.
Awesome. Well, listen, everybody's talking about, the COVID slide, for academics. It's not that. That's not the most important thing. It's the human interaction slide, the social thing that we've missed and the socio-emotional connection. And so if we don't start next year, and yours starts before mine, but if we don't start next year with some of that first, then I think we're missing a huge opportunity and failing straight from the beginning. So we have to hit that hard right out of the park.
So true. So true.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And I need to set you up with Kimberly, my friend that presented just before this. So
awesome. Sounds great. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.